why, and someone else can pitch in here, why would you say that? What part of it is not as easy to resolve as like a bug?
Like it's people work off of more things than just input and output.
Why?
There's emotion and other things involved. I guess comparing it to a computer will do exactly what you tell it to do, and explicitly nothing else.
Yep.
As a general sort of, you want to do well in the assignment, but you also want some free time. You also want dedicated time to other things.
Yeah, I like that answer. There's an inherent element of contradiction where someone's like, and I saw this a lot when I was teaching. People are like, I really, really, really want to get a HD in this assignment, and I'm like, are you willing to put in 300 hours of work? And they go, no. But you said you wanted a HD. Yeah, I do want a HD. But to do a HD, you have to put in 300 hours of work. Oh, really? So, I think that's a really good point. I want to push back against about the one about computers will do exactly what you tell them to, no more, no less, and we'll explore that in a second with AI. But I think in the non-AI world, that is a good assumption to go by. What about other people? Does anyone want to share any, without being, without breaching anyone's confidentiality, any teamwork stories? Yes.
People waiting until 3 minutes before the deadline to commit their changes.
Oh yeah.
And then the pipeline failing. And the changes not coming through.
And they didn't go through. So what did you do? You submitted late, or you just didn't go through?
Didn't submit.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. What's the lesson learned?
Do it before then.
Do it before then. Why do you think they did it late?
Because they didn't start doing it until an hour before it was due.
Okay. Why do you think they didn't start until an hour before it was due?
I have no idea.
So what you kind of both have touched on is like people are A, very different from each other, and B, quite complex. I think you can still systematically deal with it, and the great news is, if anyone had like a horrible course, I mean, you're probably not in the lecture, but if you're watching it online, or you're watching it later, or this is like six terms into the future and you just happen to stumble across this recording, but 1531 was still like quite a difficult experience for some people. My words of like consolation is like, it will get better. You will do more teamwork, there will be more sucky points, but overall it will get better, and you will get better at working in a team generally. And then you'll leave university and go to work and deal with the same problems but in a different setting. Usually in a workplace people are a bit more motivated to do stuff, but not always. I've worked in plenty of places where the people just kind of like, waited till the hour before to start their code changes is a pretty accurate description. You can have a piece of merch as well, by the way. You can come and grab it later if you want. Anyone else? For all the online people, I do apologize. I was stalling while we were getting set up. Thank you so much, Yuchao, for fixing my computer problems. I'm a software engineer and I should be able to fix this myself, but there you go. Yes?
Go like reviewing other people's code.
Reviewing other people's code. I love how you brought up that one because I'm going to talk about it again today. What was hard about reviewing other people's code?
Like, obviously, if you're working in a group and you didn't write all the code yourself, so if you look at someone else's code like with fresh eyes, you gotta like take time to actually understand what's going on.
Yeah. Who finds reviewing code difficult? I find it difficult. I do it about 5 times a day. I'm glad you put your hand up. Didn't even know what the question was. You can have a duck for that.
A what? Oh, yes, please.
Actually, hang on. I'll make you answer a question first. You can have a duck or a piece of merch when you answer a question. I got too excited. Okay. Reviewing code. I'm going to spoil a bit of this talk. Most of your job in the future is probably going to be reviewing code, so now's a good time to get good at it. It's really difficult because, like you said, when you've written the code, you understand it back to front. You understand, why is this here? Why have we done it in this certain way? What is it trying to do? What are the edge cases? What are the assumptions? particularly if the person whose code you're reviewing doesn't document that, you're just coming at it going like, well, it looks okay, I guess. Oh, it doesn't work. So reviewing is an interesting one. I'm gonna go through that when it comes to reviewing code generated by AI. One more. You can grab a piece of merch as well. Yes.
At least for my team, I think we had issues on deciding on this direction for the project's development. Like, we don't have like a product manager or an engineer manager to like micromanage us. We're like all going at it with our own perspectives on the development.
Yeah.
And because of that, if we were doing two functions at the same time, when we went to commit them, we could have made changes to the interface, or like to how data's being stored, and they would conflict with each other, and then you'd have to redo someone's function. So it was just a bit difficult with that.
Yeah, trying to coordinate when you have 5 people, and I think I said this last time, but like the surface area of code that you're working on is like bigger than anything you've worked on before, but it's still not that big. It's like 20 files. 2 people touch the same file, bang, merge conflict. Who got that in the project? Yeah, most people. Happens to me at work as well. Actually, the most annoying one, this is a tangent, but I'm like working on a file and it takes a while for our CI builds to run. So you guys will have like 2 or 3 minute, that pipeline runs. That's like 2 or 3 hours for us sometimes. And so my least favorite thing in the world is, all right, okay, push it, the CI build, oh my God, it took 2 hours, blah, blah, blah. And then someone hits you with a merge conflict. Not fun. But in general, yeah, you're working over a small surface area and you have to get good at talking about your code and coordinating who's doing what. And that's really tricky, especially when you all have other lives outside of COMP1531 to sort out. Okay, that's my teamwork spiel. The pro-socio guys are really good. You should watch their lecture from the previous terms. But I'm going to talk about. Should I do AI first? Yeah, I'll do AI first, and then I'll talk about internships and how you can come and work at Atlassian and have lots of fun using AI to build software. I don't have very verbose slides because mainly today's lecture is going to be coding. I'm going to talk about what does it look like when we do software engineering in the AI era. Now, last time I came here, I used some AI tools to write some code, and we had a bit of fun with that. But I think I did a little poll of who uses AI to write code, and then you chat kind of like code areas like this. Who has used an AI tool to generate some code before? Okay, cool. I'm not going to ask who has done it in their university assignments because I don't want to go there. But I'm a bit like out of the loop on uni stuff lately. Is there anyone that lets you use AI for your assignments, or they've all just been like, nah? Oh, some people. What kinds of courses?
It's like you're meant to, like with comp courses.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
like you're meant to say this part was AI generated.
Right.
It's like reference it.
But if the assignment is to implement breadth first
So
search,
you can't just use AI to implement it.
okay.
It's like if it's like a small piece of code, like it's like 10 lines long.
Oh, okay. So it's basically like Stack Overflow, except
Kind of,
that
yeah.
AI did it for you.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, what I want to do today is I want to, without spoiling the whole assignment for people who are going to do it in the future, I want to try and do your whole 1531 assignment in like 30 minutes with a piece of AI or some version of it. So I'm going to ask you, Chao, to stop me if I'm treading on stuff.
Not too much because some students they haven't submitted.
They haven't submitted yet. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe. So you guys did you guys do the Kahoot or the Microsoft Teams one?
The Kahoot one.
The Kahoot. Okay. Maybe we'll do the Teams one then. So the Teams one is like the project of 1531 when I took the course, and then they kept it for like several years. I think the Kahoot got swapped a couple of years ago, and now the Kahoot is the old project. That's how old I am. But before I get into that, I just want to talk briefly about where we're at in the state of the industry. So now I can do this because I used to talk about like the olden days a lot when I gave lectures about server architecture and stuff, and I was like pretty young back then, like 5. But now I can talk about times that I remember. Like in fact, I was sitting in this room at uni in my 3rd year of uni, And I think I mentioned this in the last lecture, but someone said, oh, there's this new thing called ChatGPT out. Who remembers, I think, and I probably did this poll last time as well, who remembers when AI first kind of like became a thing? You had your mate show you or someone, be like, what's this thing? And you guys would have been in school, right? What happened in school when this first like exploded?
Everything became so easy.
Everything became so easy.
For a moment, and the school banned it.
Yeah,
And
okay.
soon after, they reversed the change because they want to embrace new technology.
Yeah.
I full marked all my assignments for one term.
You what, sorry? You?
I did good on all my assignments.
Oh, you got full marks, right. That's really funny. Solid. Like AI has obviously been in the works for many years. This school in particular does a lot of AI research, and it has done even before 2022. There is still a course called COMP1531 that I've never taken. It's about AI, and it ran for many years. And yeah, like the people knew what it was, and then all of a sudden, I actually don't know the history in a whole lot of depth, but my very surface level understanding is that Google developed this thing called a transformer, and that had allowed for some like higher level natural language processing, which allowed OpenAI to build the first version of ChatGPT. That could be wrong, so please don't quote me on that, and instead go Google it. And this idea that AI now has a voice is like, before it was kind of just like mathsy stuff, and now we can communicate with the AI using language, and that is the basis on which it all works. And that's really interesting because with these sorts of breakthroughs, you make the breakthrough, and then everything else gets built around the breakthrough. I'll give you another example that is also in, I think, all of our lifetimes. This is a pretty new thing, right? Not this is like, this phone is from 2019 because I refused to get a new phone. But when the iPhone first came out, like that completely changed how we interact with technology overall. Because before it's like you've got your flip phone, your BlackBerry phone. What phone did you used to have, Yichao? No, what did you used to have before the iPhone?
Nokia.
Okay, Nokia, yeah. Your Nokias or your Blackberries or those ones. And then the iPhone comes out, and oh my god, it's a huge thing, and it's a huge business success, which drives a lot of this stuff. It makes a lot of money, and then everything all of a sudden now is an app on your phone, and the whole world gets built around this concept of you have this thing in your pocket that can annoy you whenever someone wants, until you figure out how to use Do Not Disturb. And so the same thing is happening now with AI, where it's like, okay, now we have the ability to talk with this computer that has language and voice and words, and it can do a lot of cool stuff, i.e. it can spit out a whole lot of words back at you, and some of those words might be useful. In our case, it's code, which is going to be useful. So let's rethink everything in terms of how do we change like Atlassian products like Jira or Confluence, or like in your case GitLab if you've been using it. Like imagine what GitLab would be if you were just interfacing with a LLM, and the LLM writes the code, or it's completely changing the surface and also like how these systems are built. And that's my point about turbulence of revolutions is like that's what happens, is that we rethink how these systems work, and our lives change. So for me, I use this thing Cursor a lot. The one I'm going to show you today is an Atlassian tool called RoboDev CLI. It's just like a CLI program that lets you do stuff with AI. In fact, I'll show you now. RoboDev. And like for me, compared to last year where I would write a lot of code myself, I get AI to generate a lot of code because it saves me time. I think I talked last lecture in the maintainability one about testing. I don't really like writing tests. It's not like the most, enticing thing to do. And so I get the AI to do that for me. So those sorts of things is like how we change, how you operate your life, how you do your job. how you talk to and communicate with other people. Obviously, these things have changed how we, communicate with other people. Now, we don't use real words, we use emojis. That makes me sound old. What's an example? Explain, well, this does repository doesn't exist. I want you to create a new React app front end and Node Express server backend. This thing always really annoys me. Always. So this is Rovo Dev CLI. The last thing I wanted to say about my overview of AI in the world today is that obviously everything is built on a model. Just like everything in the iPhone world is like based on the concept that you have this thing on, that you carry around with you all the time, and you could build apps on the App Store. It's the same in the LLM world where you have some sort of large language model. It might be Claude, it might be Gemini, it might be ChatGPT. What's another one that I've missed? I think they're the main ones. DeepSeek, yeah, of course. It might be DeepSeek. And they all have, serve relatively the same function. This is taking a long time. They all serve relatively the same function, and you can use those. Now, who do you think, and I say this is not just because I work in business, but like a lot of how these developments, how these things change over time is driven by money for these big businesses, right? Like Apple is like, man, the iPhone was a success, so they pour a lot of money into the iPhone. Things like Apple TV. I don't know, I mean, I don't work at Apple, so I couldn't tell you, but I don't think Apple TV and the shows that Apple makes make a whole lot of money, but they do help drive iPhone sales. Because what can you do? You can have an Apple store, you can have, those big TVs where they show, stuff on the TVs, and they've got, like, I really like Slow Horses, which is one of the Apple shows, or I think Foundation is another one. Who here watches Severance? That's pretty popular. Love Severance, great show. You can go to an Apple store and have Severance playing on the TV. I love Severance. Yeah, I'm going to buy that new iPhone. I don't know. I don't work for Apple, and I also don't work in marketing, and I'm also ignoring my AI. This is really annoying. You can tell I actually don't use this too regularly. What? That's great. That's fantastic. An unexpected error occurred. I'm really selling my company's product well today.
So
Okay.
trying to promoting this one, like your company?
Yeah, so this is an Atlassian tool, and I thought that I should probably show you how to use Atlassian tools, but it's one of those ones where I'm like still learning it myself because I don't use it day to day. All right, I'm going to try again. Create a Node.js backend Express server. Let's start with the backend. I'll try and figure out the front end later. And I'm going to mainly focus on, I might even try and do it as like iteration 1, 2, and 3, where you build out the functions and write tests for them, and then you build out the HTTP layer and the persistence layer, and then maybe we'll look at the front end. That's doing its thing. The other thing with these tools as well is that they kind of just have a very simple, it's like maths where everything is one of like plus, minus, subtract, or divide. Sorry, yeah, question.
What's the difference between using like the CLI versus like the cursor agent, for example?
None. All it is just like, I mean, and this is the same thing with everything. It's all just taking a bunch of stuff, feeding it to an API. Like you can't run this without an internet connection, which is really annoying because I always work on planes. It takes the stuff, feeds it to, in this case, the Claude API, and then does some amalgamation of the response. The cursor, which is the one that I used last time, is just doing that and then spitting it out in the sidebar. For RoboDev, they were like, oh, they like the concept of it's a CLI tool, so it's very easy, and we don't really have like a whole IDE, so it just kind of fits here for us. Okay, so that has gone and built a front end. Sorry, it's gone and built a back end. If I now go node, oh, hang on, let me start a new terminal. node backend server.js. It's going to be like, I don't know what that is because I didn't go npm install. Backend npm install. And now we wait 10 years for npm install to run. While this is working, another thing I want you to look at is one of the three, or actually, sorry, there's four important things with AI. And once you understand these things, you kind of can understand how most of these tools work. There's this thing called a session context, and there's this other thing called a daily total. Does anyone know what a context window is? Yes.
It's how much previous information the model can store, like base its next response off of.
How much previous information the model can store to base its next response off? Cool. Okay, let's take a step back. Let's say I'm going to have a fake conversation over here while this is doing its thing. Oh, it's already done. It still doesn't work. Why doesn't it work? In fact, instead of doing this, I'm going to say fix this. I do this a lot. I say fix this, copy paste in the error, and then hit go. This is the cursor one, by the way, just to give you an example. When I put in stuff into cursor, and it kind of has this like conversation where it comes back, it says, okay, I need you to do these things, and then eventually it's going to spit out an answer, and then I'm going to probably reply saying, okay, now that you've done this, I want you to do this next thing. Cursor doesn't, or any of these tools, they don't remember exactly what you said. The only way an AI will remember you said something is if you tell it that you said something. For example, you say, hello, or I'm going to call this person. Person, hello. AI, hello. Person, how are you? AI, good. P, what was the first thing I asked you? If you have each of these as separate calls to the LLM, like if you just went and hit the Claude API, or you went and hit the ChatGPT API, I don't know what this is doing. This is really, come on, let's try again. It's still not working. This is going great. Scripts in package.json reference service.ts directly. Does anyone know what I'm doing wrong? This is what happens when I try to multitask, which is run from the back end. Oh, here we go. I know what's wrong. I'm just in the wrong folder. Yay! That works. Okay, so now my server's running. I'm going to come back to this. And I'm going to go back to using the Atlassian tool. No, not that. Go away. Close chat.
So, which
Yeah.
large language model is this using underlying?
This one is using Claude Sonnet. All right, now we've got the backend. I want you to build the backend for an application that allows people to send messages to each other, i.e. like Slack or Microsoft Teams. Okay, what are some key features of a messaging app? You can send a message, receive messages that have been sent to you. Maybe we want a concept of channels where you can be added to a channel and maybe removed from a channel. The first person to create a channel is the admin, and only they have add remove privileges. And already in this like 4 lines, we've introduced a bunch of concepts. We have a bunch of entities, we have a bunch of system processes, like in your state diagram or one of those flowcharts that you would have done earlier in the term. There's a bunch of stuff to do there. And what I'm trying to do now is like speed that all up so that you can, you can build it pretty easily. They can have add remove privileges. let's stick with that for now. I want you to store everything in a global variable, which is how you would have done it in the first iteration, right? Which had one big global variable, and then just stick everything in that. Yeah, okay. Variable. Don't connect anything to the server yet. Just have these as independent functions. Make sure everything is tested and all the tests pass. So think of this as like a very condensed version of iteration 1. You write the functions, and this is, you know, a basic spec, you write some tests. Yeah?
What if we say make sure all the tests pass, it just writes tests, it doesn't write like it changes the tests to make the errors not show up, instead of actually fixing the errors?
That's a great point. And it does this all the time. I'm like, fix the test, and it goes, okay, skips the test. And I'm like, no, that's not what I meant. I get really annoyed. I'm like, it's just a computer, Nick, it's okay. The answer to that is, there's a mix of like shepherding it, but in this case, let's see what it spits out, and let's review the code. But it depends on the context. So if you've got a bunch of existing tests which it has no real knowledge of, and you're like, fix these, it'll be like, well, can just try to skip them, that'll fix it. Or it maybe has tried to fix it and it can't find a fix, so it's like, okay, I skipped it and that fixed it. And I'm like, no, just admit you were wrong, it's okay. In this case, I think it'll do all right because it has written the code as well. And so when it writes the code and it writes the test, it's like when you guys do test-driven development, or at least when you write your code and you write your test at the same time. So let's see what it does. You'll also notice, like, and this is kind of just like a personal theory, but because of the fact that everything is language-based, it likes to explain what it's doing. That's obviously like a feature that has been built in to these systems as well, but like if you notice that any AI tool, and I think ChatGPT is, and these, you know, the mainstream ones are the same, but they all like to really say, okay, I'm doing this now, you know, calling create file, blah, blah, blah. Some of these are very mechanical things because they're actually using, you know, raw file system APIs. But I think part of it as well is that these models will just continually spit out text because that's what they're supposed to do. And now we wait. I really like these tools because I will often for the, at home, I'm on the weekend, I'll do some work for my startup. And my idea of working for the startup is I'll say, here's the thing, I write this kind of prompt, I hit enter, I go put on some washing, and then it goes and does it. And then I come back a couple of minutes later and it's done. Now, cool, it's built the stuff. I don't know what it spat out, we'll have a look in a second. And it goes, let me run the test to make sure everything works correctly and create a jest configuration. So it's doing that thing now. One thing I like about it as well, and this is kind of getting better over time, is that all those annoying environment setup commands it will run for you, like npm install. And so now it's just like, okay, cool, the tests are passing. That's it. Now, what do we have so far? We've got some tests. This is all in JavaScript as well, which I kind of don't like, but that's all right. We have a messaging system. We've got our global data store. This might look a bit like what you guys had. Generate ID, generate DM key, create user, get all users, create channel. Okay, this is looking all right. Get channel, add user to channel. Remove user from channel. Get user channels, get channel members, send channel message, send direct message. Okay, so it's kind of, and I don't know if we really explicitly said this, but it's built in the concept of like a channel versus a DM. We did kind of say it should be like Slack or Microsoft Teams, so that is, you know, I think that kind of makes sense. Obviously, if you've got more specific requirements, like for example, yeah, here we go. you shouldn't have DMs or you should have very specific things, you need to include that. To your point about like machines will do exactly what you tell them, no more, no less, that, at least in my mind, is kind of broken by AI because it will assume things and it will make good assumptions and it will make bad assumptions. And your job as the engineer who's prompting the AI is to clarify some of those assumptions which may not be intuitive to you and they may not be intuitive to other people as well. So it's the same sort of problems where like if you say to someone, I want you to go and do this thing, and this comes back to what you up back said about if someone else wrote the code, you don't have full control over it, at least at the start, because they have a different, they have a different brain to you, and so they're thinking maybe slightly differently about it. Same thing for this. Okay, I think it's done okay. I'm not thrilled that it's in JavaScript, but we can live with that. The thing I think it's mainly missing is the fact that, have we got the admin controls in? Let's ask it. Did you build in the admin controls I asked for? I'm also kind of like suspicious about the fact that it doesn't have very many tests, but I could be wrong. Okay, cool. So it's like it's defending itself. Testing admin controls, blah 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 blah. Strict validation. Only the channel admin can add and remove users. Okay, that seems fine. Let's go verify that. A lot of these things. Oh, sorry.
So now that you've created all that using the bot,
Yeah.
what's like a quick way to verify that it's done what you want? Because otherwise, you're going to spend as much time reviewing it as much as it would take you to just write it.
That's a really good point. So I kind of have cheated a little bit here. I will not normally build an entire, like the whole of iteration 1 in one go. What I would instead do is build like one route. Like imagine, like you would in one of your GitLab tickets on the task board, where you say, okay, I'm going to build this route, get AI to do it, test it. We have written tests for all this, to be fair. So depending on how confident you are in the test, you could say that this works.
Yeah. You reckon it would be better to like split the prompts up, like make the functions separately to the tests, so then the tests aren't like biased to make the functions look like they're passing?
You've touched on a really good point, which is like, and you've kind of said this a couple of times, right? Is like, what if the tests are bad? What if the tests are kind of garbage? And there are a few ways, there's essentially a level of which you have to manually review things and kind of sanity check stuff. Like, let's look at this test here. All right, should create a user successfully. User, all right, create user, blah, blah, blah. User to have property, user.name should be this, email. Like, that's a pretty decent test, right? So sometimes you have to just look at it and judge whether it, spat out garbage. I think if I run all these tests, then we actually do have a pretty comprehensive coverage of the system. Yeah, okay, like that's pretty good.
So can you just like at one point just assume it's working, and then if it's not, you can come back to it later?
Depends on what you're trying to do. Like if you're just playing around, in our case we're just playing around, then it's fine. If someone, like for me at work, I can't do that. I can't be like, oh, I think it's working. Like the AI, it looks fine. I have to go and spend time maybe manually running the code to test it, or in our case, I think the best way we can test it is we're going to go build the front end. I'll show you a bit of front end code that's AI generated. We can get the front end, call the back end, and then we'll actually check that this works. The best way to do it is test, and you just have to make sure the tests are good. However, another way you can do it is by getting getting the AI to compete with itself. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to Rovo Dev and use a cool feature called sub-agents. And what a sub-agent is, it brings us to this idea of agentic AI, where you have not just one AI that kind of can do everything for you and is fantastic, but you have different people, so to speak, and each person has their own job. And what we're kind of slowly moving to, at least at the moment in 2025 in the AI world is you've got an agent that writes code, you've got an agent that reviews code, you've got an agent that writes docs, you've got an agent that reviews docs, you've got an agent that handles your operations, you've got an agent that handles your team communications, you've got an agent that can do marketing. You know, every single role you could possibly think of is an AI agent. In this case, maybe we want someone to help us write the code and someone else who can review it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a sub-agent and I'm going to put it in the project, and the sub-agent's name is code reviewer. And the sub-agent in one sentence is your job is to review the code generated by other AI agents. Now, you can actually configure what model you want, and a good thing to do is have a different model review the code to the model that generated it. So rather than using the parent agent's model, which is like Sonnet something, I'm going to use, let's try GPT-5. I've never tried this one before, but let's have a go. Now this says, okay, I'm going to, based on what you just said, build out this agent. It's going to generate some prompts. Here we go. You are an AI code review agent specialized, American spelling, in analyzing and evaluating code generated by other AI agents. Your primary objective is to thoroughly examine code submissions, assessing their blah, 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 blah. I love AI generated content so verbose. Quality, best practice, focus on identified logic errors, performance issues, security vulnerabilities, deviations from established coding guidelines. Hey, it sounds like a lot like what we talked about in the last lecture about how to write good code. Funny that. Provide constructive feedback, blah, blah, blah. Okay, cool. That looks good. Yes, use the parent agent's tools. Sweet. Now, please get the code reviewer agent to review the code we just generated. Let's have a look. Yes.
So when you're doing sub-agent to the main agent, it's just like the context it has access to. Like what's the...
Yes. That's a great way to put it. Let me draw a picture. So this is the context for the main agent, and here's the reviewer. Here's all the code. Both of these can review the code and do stuff with the code and change the code, but they are separate entities. They are separate brains, if you will. And what can happen is that you can have context in here, and I'm like, well, hello, main agent, is your code good? And it's like, well, of course it's good. I wrote it. It's fantastic. Look. And it references its own internal, what we call context, but you can think of it as like its own internal knowledge base. And sort of like verifies itself, whereas this guy has no association with that and can say, well, this code is bad. And doesn't rely, it's not muddied by extra stuff that's sitting in the context. So here we go. This is what the reviewer has said. And then it does this funny thing where it like ladders back up, so it like spits out what the reviewer said and then it says it again. So for example, authorization. Oh, thank you. Okay. There we go. Overall assessment, solid foundation. Authorization gaps in read functions. Anyone can read any user's private messages. That's a problem. No verification of the requester can see those messages. Input validation issues. Email uniqueness is case sensitive. No email format validation. Performance conserves. Message retrieval scans all messages. OM complexity. Who here's done 2521 and knows what that means? Yeah, cool. And these are pretty valid points. I'm not really too fussed. You probably all have like ON complexity on your systems because you just do a linear scan, right? Recommended improvements, fix authorization, normalize email. Like this is pretty relaxed. So it did a good job. At least the AI thinks it did a good job. Yes?
And so what's the difference between like a sub-agent and main agent in terms of performance? And then, like,
What do you mean by performance?
Because like it's called a sub-agent and it's
Yeah.
not a main agent. Does that actually mean anything? Or does it just mean they're different entities?
It just means, in this world, it means they're different entities, and like in this case, you interact with the main agent, and then if you go /sub-agent, like if I go to this one, Oh, and that's me editing it, sorry. Yep, save. Sorry. Can I do code reviewer?
I think my question is like, what makes a sub-agent except for the context window?
Nothing. It just is like sitting. The reason it's a sub agent is that it's just sitting under like the umbrella of your AI agents, and that's just how this particular system is built.
Okay.
A lot of AI agentic systems, like another one I'll show you, is one that we use for knowledge management on Jira and Confluence. So it's also called Rovo because everything in Atlassian is called Rovo. But you might say, what am I currently working on? And it'll tell you what you're currently working on. Again, loves to like spit out and tell you every second what it's currently looking at. We also have this tab, so yeah, here we go. These are the tickets I'm working on. It's pretty accurate actually. Blah, 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 blah. And then I go into agents, and it's like, here's some specific ones that you want, here's some specific tools that you might want to interact with. So this is an agent that I built to answer questions about Post Office, the system that I work on, and it has very specific knowledge. So I've actually gone and said, hey, you have knowledge from these particular pages, or you can read this part of Slack. And what that does is it limits the amount of stuff that it has to think about. Same thing for the dev code agents as well. Generally, and it's the same principle we talked about before of like, you have one file that does one thing, same thing, you have one agent that does one thing. We call that the single responsibility principle. Cool, all right, now it's 3 o'clock. What I might do is go tell it to build the front end, and then we can all have a break. Do you want to build the front end first? We're going to do the HTTP layer as well. We'll do HTTP layer, front end, going to talk about interviews, and then there's some more stuff about like how you think about AI. So let's do iteration 2 basically, right? Because that's the next step. So now please create a HTTP layer in the server that you made. In the front end, build a simple UI that lets me use the functionality we've just made. I'll skip the persistence, but yeah, that's iteration 2, and then we make the front end as well. So I'm going to do that. It's going to do its thing. I'm probably going to have to nudge it a couple of times, but while it's doing its thing, you can have a break, go to the bathroom, we can keep chatting. Enjoy. See you. That's all right. Thanks for being good. Grab your merch. Yeah, you go.
What are these?
Those are straws.
Straws?
Yeah.
Metal straws?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Enjoy.
Thank you.
Got another pouch for anyone who wants one. Who here has answered a question that is not grab merch? You're welcome to grab some merch. Cool. While I'm sitting here, any questions? AI or otherwise? Shoot.
In general, about AI, I mean, I don't know, students probably were more maybe encouraged to like understand standards more like maybe fundamental skills like self rather than offloading, learning them to an extent. But I mean, if it's used in the industry and it's like accepted as a kind of next like sort of frontier the same way.
Yeah.
My question is then, so like, what are your thoughts on, at least from the outside as a student looking at how AI is involved, what are your thoughts on like, I don't know, like the long-term future and sort of like genuine use cases for it? It's being used now, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, there's probably more recently talking about how companies like OpenAI still aren't profitable, or how some big tech companies just kind of passing through between each other.
Yeah.
It looks like it's doing a lot when sort of the actual value of it compared to the previous jumps that we've had in the past, like the internet and stuff.
Yeah, that's a really good question. I don't know. Like you're right. I mean, it could be a fad, and we're still, like you said, and I might have gotten halfway through saying this before, but like the only people that are, that's great. The only people that are making money are, like the tech companies that are selling these tokens to each other so that they can build tools. The people making the most money at the moment, it's like the gold rush. The people who make money first are the people selling the pickaxes. And that's just like a normal part of anything. So yeah, it could end up like the iPhone and change our lives forever. It could, I don't think it's going to go away, but the question is what will it turn into and how much will it change things is probably the one you're getting on. The initial question of, okay, as a student, it's like, what do you do? I find that really tricky because, yeah, I got first introduced to it at a point where, like, I have a pretty strong foundation because I've spent I spent a year just working at Atlassian before I started using these tools in depth because they're, at least for me, or at work and in a bunch of tech spheres, only really have like kicked off this year. Oh, there we go, that's finished. And so before that, it's just like we just wrote code by hand. Maybe you use GitHub Copilot to do a few tabs, but nothing quite like this. So it is tricky. The fundamentals are really important, and I'm not just saying that because Yu Chao is is like is here, but but you can't review AI code without understanding how code works. However, that doesn't mean you can't get a grasp of the fundamentals by. Sorry, let me start again. It doesn't mean that you can't get a grasp of the fundamentals by using AI. I don't really know what that looks like exactly because I haven't done it myself, but I like to think of it as, imagine, I mean, have you guys done OS or done an Andrew Taylor course where they talk about the punch cards? The whole people love talking about the punch cards. If you meet anyone who did computers in the 90s, they'll always tell you about how every time they wanted to run their code, sorry, I sound a bit mean, but every time they wanted to run their code, they'd have to go to CSE and they'd get their punch cards, and it had, I don't know, it had some array of their program, and they put it in, and it goes, "Burp, your program was wrong," and you come back, and you go back, and you try again, and the next day you put it in. Imagine that. Look at what we've just built, a whole website in 10 minutes. I didn't even build it, the thing built it for me. So not only has there been a lot of change, but we have gone up levels of abstraction since then. I didn't do punch cards at uni. I just used VS Code and stuff like you guys do now. So think of it as instead of writing your code in C, you're writing your code in Python. That's probably my best analogy. Instead of dealing with punch cards, we just now work at a higher level of abstraction. And it might be that the point of abstraction is not very technical, or it is very high level technical. So you guys in COMP1531 in the next course, they changed this recently, are going to deal with microservices and how do you think about a whole system architecture. And so that's part of the fundamentals as well. And before we had this problem of, well, we're kind of just too busy coding to really worry about that stuff. But now it's well, some of the things that you had to really think about before, you don't have to worry about the registers in your program because that is all handled for you. There's an extent to which AI will become that sort of abstract layer. The problem is when that messes up, you still have to go and debug it, right? But as it evolves, as it matures, it'll get to a point where maybe, you don't really understand as much of the specific code details, but you understand how the whole system works. We're not quite there yet though, because the code is still there and the code still doesn't work sometimes, as we talked about just now. Sorry, that was a really long answer, but I did want to talk about that.
There's a lot of questions.
Yeah, there's a very, very open-ended question. I honestly don't know what it'll do because no one does, but it's so interesting watching, I'll talk about this more in a bit, but businesses where they're just AI. Everything is AI. AI is the future. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. Can I have the notes so that I won't pick it?
Oh yeah, do you want to use that one?
Just this one.
Oh, sure.
Just this
Oh, that one, sorry.
I think that's a really good question, and I've been also talking with people around about this question because I feel like this is really important to know so that I can make my teaching and the course like useful. So after talking with a bunch of people from industry, from academia, from Australia, from the US, from UK, a lot of people, the answer that I got like in summary is that no one knows what's going on next. So the kind of most important skills for our student now are like two dimensions. The first one is being adaptive learner. So being an adaptive learner. So like we all know, like tech is fast changing. Like even before AI is a thing, it's been changing so fast. Like when I was a student, undergraduate student, the only programming language that I was learning was C and C++. And then we are learning JavaScript, Python, and a lot of different ones, and they are much higher level, very different. So if you want to work in tech, in technology, I think being adaptive is always very important. It doesn't matter whether we are now in AI era or not. So this is the first one, like being adaptive, always learning the new things and not afraid of the new things coming up. The second dimension is that I'm not sure if you heard of the fourth industry evolution. So have you heard of that? No, so the first one was the when we had like the machines. The second evolution was when we have the lines, like people working on the specific part of building a car rather than a small group of people building the whole car. So that's the second evolution. And the third evolution was the autonomy, like the robots, the next level of automatic building the industry. And now we are actually in the beginning of the fourth industry evolution, which talks a lot more about like the human's need, like more about the human. So you may notice a trend, like the first evolution was like the technology itself. Like now we have like the new kind of industry, the cars and things. And the second evolution was like they changed the way people work. Like people have their specialized part of the line, and then things are building much faster. And the third evolution was again about technology, about the automatic robots and stuff. And then the fourth evolution is again more about human. So it's not just about how the technology work, but more about how we use the technology to make an impact, to make something new, to meet the human's need. So why I'm talking about that, like, it's the new kind of skill set that we need for the future of like software engineers or developers or people working on tech, is that you need to know how to use technology to meet the human's need. So it's more about like you understand the human, the people part. So to be able to use the technology properly, first you need to know the technology, right? So you still need to know the technology, but that's not enough. You also need to know about how you can leverage the humanity, the human part of the technology, and use the technology to make an impact on human. So I think that's the two skill sets that I found can be quite useful for the future of engineers, software engineers. The first one is being adaptive. The second one is know how to use the technology for human impact. So a lot of skills, like not only technology skills is important in the future, but more like your communication skills, like how you actually get to know the human's need, right? So the communication skills, your collaborative skills, and what are the other ones? Like being empathy, like know the people's need, being more empathetic, being more innovative in the way of using technology to solve human problems. So yeah, so it's more complicated, more demanding for the future us. So yeah, but anyway, we need to know the technology first so that we can build on top of what we know. go back to you.
Thanks, Yucha. That's really insightful. I really like that. Be adaptive and understand the human part of tech, which comes back to what we were talking about at the start, right? Where you guys have spent the last 10 weeks tearing your hair out over teammates. It's like that's actually, I'd say there's like two pillars. There's the people side of it, and then there's the technical side of it, and both of those changes as the tech changes. As the systems get bigger that you work on, you have to deal with more technical problems. As you work with more people and in larger contexts like bigger business, you have to deal with more people problems. Anyway, the thing finished. It finished a while ago, but let's have a look and see. So our server is running, but I think I need to restart it because it doesn't do hot reloading. Whoop-de-doo. Address already in use, port 3001. -I. This is a nice thing if you want to kill something that's running on a port. Kill as in like terminate a process. You can see, oh, this process ID is running on this port. Let's go kill -9 that. And now if you run it again, you'll see that nothing's running on that port. So I can go node server.js, bang, here is our API. Now, this is the moment of truth. CD, front end. npm start. Oh, npm install. Okay, npm start. Ooh. That was not what I expected. Did you mean one of these? No. npm run start. Thank you. I use yarn. That was a good try. Let's have a look. Private. Oh, I can't even run anything. Maybe if I try. No. Wait. What's this doing? API based local. Oh, there's a server.py. Sorry, I thought you were joking. Wait, hang on. Let's read the. What has this done? I love AI. Can I try this? Document is not defined. Of course, it's document. What is? I don't know what's going on here. I just asked it for a. Let's try that. Yay! That worked. Okay, the reason is because that wasn't running. I thought it was going to build like a. I don't know if anyone's done React apps are hosted as a server. So you've got your API server that you've been working on all term. Then you have the front end server, and that serves up front end code. This didn't do that. It just has a raw file that you go and visit. But this is our messaging app. So I'm going to create a new user called Nick Trigios, and I'm going to put in my username. Create user, bang, created successfully. Oh, look at that. Log in as user. That's a weird feature. Channel name, 1531 is awesome. See above. Create channel. Oh, look at that. Let's have a look at this. I'm an admin. I can DM people, view messages. Hello. This is cool. Ain't it? So that just built a whole front end and is currently storing all that data in memory. You can see all the requests that go to the API channels, users. What else can we do? Members. There you go. Add member. I'm the only user. That's great. View messages. Load all messages. Oh, and they've got some debug tools as well. That's nice. Let's try and have a conversation. Yuchao at unsw.edu.au. This is not Yuchao's real email. All right, I'm gonna add Yuchao to my channel. There you go. Oh, hang on. Maybe I can log in as Yuchao. There we go. Sorry, I'm just having fun here now. Lecture is today. Lecture. Oh dear. There we go. Now we can do DMs as well. This is really fun. Sometimes when you, like, obviously I didn't give it a whole lot of prompting. This is not how you would build a real application, but it is fun just to see what it spits out. And the thing I find really funny, particularly about front-end stuff, I know you guys haven't been doing front-end, so I won't hark on it too much, but like the UIs it produces, despite the code not being super fantastic, they look pretty good. So, there's something to be said. So I'm not going to worry about the front-end code. I'm going to mainly worry about the back-end code. Oh, there's a demo.js that they've gone and made. Oh, that's nice. They've actually gone and made some things that will show you it working, some like QA examples. In the server.js, we've got all the endpoints, just like you probably have in your server.ts or whatever it looks like. Same sort of thing. I kind of, yeah. I don't love how it is interacting with the, oh, this is the debug, okay. Yeah, it shouldn't be touching the data layer ideally, but these all look pretty good. Let's see what the code reviewer agent says about these code changes. Please review the backend changes with the code reviewer. I'm pretty positive today on what code the AI has spat out, but that's mainly because, like, if this was working in a code base that I'd spent a lot of time in, I would have a lot more notes like this is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. To go back to our JS paint, often what will happen is that I actually had this happen this morning, where the AI loaded something into its context window, and think of this as like there's like file 1 and file 2, and file 2 is like some sort of configuration for file 1, and it had file 1 in the context, but not file 2, and I was like, go fix this thing. And so it tried to update file 1, and I was like, that's still not working. And it's like, oh, I'll try again. It keeps trying to update file 1, but it didn't even know that file 2 existed, because it hadn't sort of, I don't know, it just hadn't really thought of, it hadn't really gone and realized that it needed to search other files to maybe solve the particular problem. Sometimes it does do that though. So the other thing, and I meant to include this on my list of 3 important things to understand about AI, which is actually 4 important things. We talked about context window, we talked about LLMs are stateless. The 4th one is that these models change all the time and they're not necessarily stable. I'm sure that the big tech companies are trying their best to make these models consistent and stable, but that's the kind of the nature of like of these models, is that they, you know, will churn up and spit out in mathematical ways that I don't understand, results that vary from time to time. So yeah, the solution is to make sure that 2 gets into the context by saying, usually explicitly, go read this file and then try and solve the problem. All right, so the code reviewer has said there's some critical issues. String IDs from request bodies aren't passed to numbers. Routes fail because model uses numeric map keys. Oh, that's all from the same problem. There are some bad HTTP status codes, and this is good, right? Because you're kind of getting essentially a free person to like look over your code and be like, oh, actually this should be 403 and not 400. And there's some security vulnerabilities. Users can spoof admin ID or sender ID in request bodies, and there's no authentication. That's probably the biggest problem with this system, right? Is there's literally 0 auth on anything, and anyone can just kind of come and do whatever they want. But it's not like these problems aren't solvable. And the thing I like about all of these tools is that they go, here's all the things we can do, which one do you want me to do? All right. Is there anything else anyone wants me to like demo with this? I would have loved to have actually done your guys' project, because that would have been cute, but obviously some people still doing it, and this is going to be recorded, and that project is going to be reused across terms. But I hope you get the idea. I think you've had a valuable term, like learning what all those things are, and sometimes you just need to know what the thing is, right? Like maybe you don't need to have to write a whole HTTP server yourself, but at least you know what it is, having done it once now. Yeah. Any other questions about RovoDev? Yes.
I don't know if it's specifically about RovoDev, but I think earlier in the lecture you wrote a few lines like hello, and like you were like, oh, someone's talking to the AI.
Yep.
And asking it like, what was the first question I asked?
Yes, I think I didn't finish that bit, did I? I don't think I did finish that bit. I'm like the AI. That's like I can't even remember what I said.
I was wondering what the purpose is.
So, sorry, to go back to that. if you have this as, and think of like these dividing lines as being like separate, separate chats in ChatGPT. You're like, hello, AI goes, hello. You go, oh, it's actually more like this. How are you? AI goes, how are you? Oh, sorry. AI says, good. And then person says, what was the first thing I asked you? And AI is like, I don't know, because this is the conversation context. And how every call to the API works. I love artificial intelligence. How the APIs work is that you just feed in, like when you say, okay, what was the first thing I asked you? It will go, the person has asked you, what was the first thing that I asked you? Here is all the previous context of the conversation. That's very easy to answer if you have the whole rest of the conversation. And the key thing I'm trying to get across is that the LLMs are stateless. So they intrinsically, like if you ask the LLM one thing and the same thing again, it will not remember that fact because it doesn't save what you asked it to. It will only remember it if you say, here is the first thing I asked you. What was the first thing I asked you? Does that kind of make sense?
Like in the one thing.
Yes, in the one thing.
Yeah,
So
it's not going to say like the order in that's why you say it's stateless.
yes, that's why it's stateless. It doesn't know that you used it. It doesn't. I mean, it might in some like abstract way, but it doesn't know that in the first, two API calls ago, you said the word hello. But if you say something like this, where it's like, here is the conversation history. Here is the question. And this is kind of what a lot of these tools like Cursor and RovoDev and stuff do. I'll give you another example actually to make it a bit more clear. If I go to ai.ts, this is some startup code. And this is some code that calls, I think it just calls ChatGPT directly. So here we go. This is the prompt. This is what is given to ChatGPT. And it says, you are Ferris, this educational AI assistant designed to help students with their studies. And it has a bunch of context which we want to know, where it's like, this is the school ethos, which has been configured by an administrator. Here's some topics to avoid. Current student message, previous conversation. If you don't include that previous conversation, it's not going to know. There's not going to be that continuity. That's how you have a conversation with an LLM, is that the whatever system has just gone and added this into the prompt. Does that make sense? Sweet. So that's the point about LLMs being stateless. The last thing, and I think I said this as well before, is that it's very much garbage in, garbage out when it comes to code in particular. Like if you have a really nice, clean, modular code and you say, go build this new feature, it will copy those patterns and just rebuild it in the same way you built it. If your code base is a mess and it's absolute spaghetti and you say, go build this feature, it will just put more mess in. And yeah, as I said, number 4 is these models change all the time. I saw an article recently where a teacher figured out how to, because they weren't allowed to ban ChatGPT at the school, but the teacher figured out how to catch out students that were using ChatGPT to generate, their short story. And there was this thing that said, if you ask ChatGPT, write me a short story, it will always give you the same short story about some little girl in the woods and blah, blah, like basically the story of Red Riding Hood, if you've ever heard of that one. And what the teacher did was, in the fine print of the assignment, said, if you hand in an assignment about a little girl in the woods, you'll get 0. What do you think happened?
Many people got 0.
Yeah, a few people handed in a story about a little girl in the woods. And they didn't even need to have a conversation about AI because they knew that the students knew, the teacher knew, everyone knew. And I thought that was really cool. But what's the problem as a software engineer? What's the immediate thing that clicks over in our heads? Yes.
You can feed the assessment specification into the prompt, and we will know that it's purely not generated.
Yeah, that's one way around it. Not sure if year 3 students are quite got that advanced, but yeah, certainly you could get the AI to be like, don't, write me a different story than the little girl in the woods. The kids who are doing this are probably not reading the assignment spec, but point taken. What about the models themselves? Yep.
The training data they have, the most typical of a short story they can possibly have is such a girl in the woods type story. So when they give a short prompt about this, it's kind of like a pattern matching
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, so you just go straight to the most stereotypical, the most obvious type of answer. That's all from the training data.
Yeah, there probably is some. Yeah, you're probably right. Some pattern matching thing from how it's been trained. What is the thing about all these AI models though? Is they can be trained and they can be retrained, right? They can be updated. So this is like anything that was axiomatically true, like, oh, we'll tell you about the little girl in the woods. That may not necessarily be true in 5 minutes or tomorrow or next week. I don't know. That was just the thing that came to mind when I read that article. I was like, especially like pre-tech brains are like, you do this, then you do this, and then this happens. But now all of a sudden it's like, and you might have talked about this with deployment, it's like, okay, you deploy a new thing, the system works completely differently to before. We could, and I find this is a little tangent, but like, where's my website gone? Is it this one? Nope. Where did my thing go? Here we go, my messaging app. Let's say we deployed this and put it on the internet and people started using it and then they got used to using it. And then all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do a big refresh to improve the UX. And you rebuild the UI, completely rip up all of this and send it out. What's going to happen? You're going to get a bunch of complaints. That's not what I was going for. I love AI. Yeah, this is what I want. This is a great little comic. If you don't know XKCD, it's a great bit of fun. We talk about this at work all the time. So let's say you have an operating system, and they released a new version of the operating system that said, okay, 10.17. Now the CPU no longer overheats when you hold down the space bar. You think that's an improvement, right? No one's going to complain about that. Long-time user number 4. They've been using the system for 15 years. They're a long-time paying customer, and they say, this update broke my workflow. My control key is hard to reach, so I hold the spacebar instead. And I configured Emacs, which is like a thing for writing code. Emacs to interpret a rapid temperature rise as control. And the admin's like, that's terrifying. Why would you do that? And they're like, my setup works for me. Just add an option to re-enable spacebar heating. This is pretty stupid, but any system that anyone gets used to using, if you go and change things, the process of changing things itself is maybe worse than the problem you were trying to solve. So you could have this like horrible, our messaging app, I'm very proud of it, don't get me wrong. And it looks, where's my file gone? Now I've just lost it. Let me start again. Frontend index.html. There we go. It looks okay, but it's not very well ordered, and this is not how you would build a real UI. But let's say you did get people using this, and then they got used to it, and then you changed it. So back to the original point. In web, you can change things like that. In AI, you don't even need to have to deploy changes. The language models will just change under your feet, and the rug may get pulled out from underneath you. So that's the thing to keep in mind when designing these systems. Okay, the last thing is kind of back to what Yuchao was saying about, about the human side of things, is that now we have this cool AI thing that can do stuff. 3 questions. Number 1, we've got all these tools. How do you use that to make money? Particularly, like, let's say you're a company and you're like, maybe instead of hiring a bunch of people, I'm going to hire, instead of hiring 20 people, I'm going to hire 10 people, but I'm going to give them AI tools. And this is what companies do. And I don't say this to like be scary, I'm just like stating the facts. I met someone recently who said his entire job was to replace people with AI in the company. And that was scary, a little bit. But the point is that like people are trying to change the way we do work, and if the question is like maybe not how do you replace people, but how do you use these tools to benefit a business or to benefit your project. We've just seen how we can use it to do some coding, but if that is like the wrong coding, or it doesn't systematically work, or it doesn't conform with whatever system you're working in, then it's pretty useless code. We just throw it in the bin. So that's one thing. How do you make it scalable? How do you review and manage the code that AI generates? We've kind of talked a bit about that today. And then number 3 is that, well, okay, if everything is just a wrapper around an LLM, how do you, if you're maybe doing a startup or a business, or you're even just like building a little product or a feature, how do you differentiate yourself? Who here is on LinkedIn? Yeah, cool, bunch of you. You can add me on LinkedIn, by the way. Maybe just include a thing that you're from the lecture as well, because I sometimes get random people adding me, and I'm like, I don't know who this is. But that's an aside. On my LinkedIn feed, I sometimes like have a look at it, and it's just a lot of people talk about AI, and here's my AI startup, and here's the AI this, and here's the AI that, and blah, 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 blah. And some of them are pretty cool things that they've built. Some of them are like, here is kind of what we've just, imagine like what we've just done with the messaging, my messaging app, which keeps hiding. The messaging app, but it's like, it's got ChatGPT, and it's got an API called ChatGPT. That's what we call an LLM wrapper. That's fine, and maybe it's useful, but how do you build products that make AI very useful? And that's an open question I'm going to leave for you. That's everything I had to say about the lovely artificial intelligence. Let's talk about interviews and how to come work at Atlassian. Let me put up a better slide than this. Okay, so who here is at the end of their first year? Sweet. Who here is doing computer science? Cool, most of you. Who here is doing a degree that is longer than computer science? Okay, a few of you. I think last time I did a little survey, and some of you doing doubles, some of you doing software engineering. So what's that? So 2 years into the future, or let's say 1 year into the future is 2026, so 2 years would be 2027. So if you're doing computer science, you're probably looking at starting a grad job in 2028. And maybe if you're doing software engineering or a longer degree, 2029. Is my timeline correct? Okay, cool. So I guess as a show of hands, is anyone like, and this is just like a poll, is anyone interested in doing an internship at Atlassian? Cool, bunch of people. 1, 2, 3, okay, I'll call that like 10. I have to do little polls as well for these talks. I hope that today's talk made you want to work at Atlassian more. I do apologise if it didn't. If you want to do an internship at Atlassian, you have to do it in the year before you graduate. So if you're graduating, let me get this right, if you're going to start working at Atlassian as a grad in 2028, you need to do the internship at the end of 2026. So that's in 1 year's time. So we've got a bunch of interns starting next week. They would have applied earlier this year, probably at like the start of this year. They would have gotten the offer like around April, May, June-ish. I think that timeline is correct. And then they'll start in November, and then they finish in February. Then they have 1 year left. And then if they get accepted as a graduate, then they can come back in another year's time and be a grad. So you guys are 1 year behind them, essentially. So if you want to do an internship, you would do it next summer. Does that make sense? Cool. Obviously, if you're doing a degree, like a longer degree, that would be elongated by 1 or maybe even 2 years in some cases. The the main thing, sorry, I'm just mainly going over what like the people who do the hiring talk about. Don't lie about when you're going to graduate so that you can do an internship, because they don't like that. They will like literally kick you out if they find out that you lied. And then you have to obviously do all the training and the stuff that you need to try and pass the interview. And there's a few rounds of interviews. I have not done them in recent years, so I don't know them all exactly, but there's usually a leak code. Does anyone here not know what a leak code is? Okay, cool. Well, if you don't know what a leak code is, it's like a hacker rank, or basically you go online, you do some sort of like algorithm type problems, and I think you have like 5 hours or something to do them, and if you solve them correctly, you get through to the next round. If you don't, then you don't get through. That is just like practice. You can practice these problems on systems like HackerRank, and it'll give you practice questions. So you just practice it a bunch of times. You do the you do the leak code, and then bang, you through the next round. Then you have other interviews like coding interviews, where you'll sit down with someone like me who works at Atlassian, and we will give you a problem, and you'll solve the problem in front of us. The point of that interview is to show how you talk and communicate about code and how you think about technical solutions. People who do really well in these interviews are able to say, okay, here's what, kind of like what the cursor did, or the Rovo dev did before. It says, okay, well, I'm thinking about these considerations, so I'm going to do this for my algorithm. Okay, here are the steps I'm taking. Here's the result. Okay, here's the tests I've tried. And you're very open about that communication the whole time. It's not necessarily about doing it perfectly. Someone who does it perfectly and is completely silent will fail the interview. That's coding, and that is more like data structures and algorithms type stuff. Another one is system design. I'm not sure if interns have to do a system design interview. That is about kind of more like 1531. What's my front end? What's my back end? They're communicating over HTTP? What does the data layer look like? How do you put a system together and make the parts work? And you've kind of got a bit of experience having done this course. I actually can't tell you if there's a system design interview for interns, but there might be. There is definitely, though, a values and management interview, which is essentially like you talking about your experience. So maybe you talk about like some challenges you had in 1531 during group work and how you overcame them. And the key thing there is that you did overcome them. With anything in these professional environments, they want to see, here's what I did and here is the impact that it had. It is unfortunately not enough to say, I did all this effort and I put in all this work and that's it. The company at the end of the day wants results. So if you say, I did all this stuff and it led to, I fixed a bunch of stuff and my team was able to finish iteration 2 days early, that kind of stuff, that's really good. So then you talk about your experience. Teamwork is obviously really big in that as well. How you've collaborated with others, how you've done project management, and how you manage your time, because that's really important in any environment. And also just like what you like doing, because that's really important. If you have the can-do attitude and the right mindset of like, I want to come and solve interesting problems and work with cool people, then Atlassian's a great place to come and work. If you're not really into those things, then it's it's about whether you like fit the culture. So that's what the values and management interview is about. I think they're the main ones. There might be some other sort of like phone calls and stuff with recruiters, and they ask you some questions. It's kind of a little bit scary, but like at any stage, you're always getting assessed with these things, because the company pays us lots of money to write code for them, and they don't want to accidentally hire the wrong people. And sometimes, sometimes the wrong people do get hired. This is anywhere, and then you have to essentially like performance manage them out, which is a very lengthy process. So we'd rather get the right people to start with. Yeah, that's most of the things. The internships itself is like a 3-month thing, and then obviously like you get more out of it if you go in person. So it's good to be in Sydney for that. I think they even fly people who are in Melbourne and stuff up to Sydney for those internships. And and then all going well, the following year, start as grad. Are there any questions? tried to cover off on as much as I can. Some of this information is a little bit fuzzy, so yeah, it'll all be on the website. So basically, if you're interested, early next year, start getting onto it. Start practicing elite code. If you've done 2521 is probably a good first step, or if not, maybe take a T1 next year, and then start getting ready. Yeah.
I'm not really familiar with anything related to the life and work inside at the same, but
Sure.
I just want to ask how one will work in a team. For example, is he focusing on the one component of the software, like the database in the front end, back end, or he's working in a team who is assigned with the project and he's working all of that?
That's a good question. So the question was, how does it work? Like, do you get given a front end or a back end component or a database or a particular area that's yours? And how is that all structured? What I will say is that, especially for early careers, you get exposure to, like, people who are early on in their careers, like you and me. We get exposure to a lot of different things, because the best thing you can do is try as much stuff as possible, because then you get to see what you like, what you don't like, and you learn a bunch of new skills. So I'm actually quite lucky because I work in a team that does deep infrastructure, everything from deep infrastructure to front-facing products, because we are about sending people messages. So you have to deal with, well, how do we send 1 billion messages a month? How do we have a system that scales? But then you also have to think about, well, what's in those messages? Are they engaging messages that will make people click on them and help the business? Are they useful messages that will improve someone's day? There's front end and back end. At least in my team, you work on the front end user facing components, as well as like core back end systems like the APIs that we've just built with the AI. Other teams are like back end focused or front end focused, and I think there's some element of choice if you do get accepted, where you can say, you might even apply actually for a specific role. So like if you apply for a front end role, then you have to do a front end coding interview and you get put in a front end team, or at least you get put in a front end role in a team. So there might be a mix of engineers. But yeah, typically early careers, it's about breadth. So I'm like a full stack engineer. I do front end and back end. And you get exposed to a variety of different ways of working in different tools. Other questions? Yes.
You mentioned that you handle storing millions of messages. Do you use the shard database infrastructure that Atlassian has for that?
Yes, we do. The concept of sharding is where basically you can store, let's say UNSW uses Atlassian, which it does. All of the data associated with UNSW is stored in one place, and that's what we call sharding. So it's like the UNSW stuff is here, the UCID stuff is over here, company number 1234 is over here, and it's all kept separately. So yeah, we make use of that because while we don't necessarily store all the data ourselves, we interact with different parts of the platform that store data. And so that is all baked in. So it's like every team at Atlassian will use that, and not just us.
When the team maintaining the shard library or infrastructure makes a change, how does your team have to update a lot of your work or your code to allow that change?
That's an excellent question. The question, sorry.
You mentioned how they're changing the UI. There'll be that person's workflow was ruined when they removed the heating spacebar.
Yeah.
Does that happen a lot for your team?
That's a really good point. I like how you brought in the UX stuff as well. I would say the difference is, and this is how, ideally when you build software, you build it in a way such that if you change stuff, it's not going to break things for other people. In the case of a front-end facing website, that is kind of hard to deal with, and what it's essentially pointing at is a thing called Hiram's law, which is that it doesn't matter, the heating space bar is not in the spec, right? It's not in the thing of this is what the operating system does. It was just a random side effect. But if you have enough users for your system, then any observable or external behavior will be relied upon by someone. So to answer your question, yes, sometimes teams change stuff and it breaks our stuff because it was some undocumented feature that we just were like, well, it just works this way, so we're going to use it and it's helpful for us, and oh, well, all of a sudden it's broken. Sometimes it's literally a documented thing and the team has gone, yeah, we're just going to take that out one day and not tell anyone about it, and it breaks our stuff. Companies like Atlassian have to adopt certain practices to try and prevent that from happening because people get really annoyed. I get really annoyed. And so they end up doing something a bit like how NPM packages work, right? Where it's like, okay, cool, I've got a new version, I publish that version. When you're ready, pull the new version from the registry, just like you do with NPM. That's a really good question though. Yeah, it's tricky. And ideally, your software is self-contained so that, like with our one, if you change the database layer, you don't have to go and change the server layer in your app.ts. Any more questions? Cool. Oh, sorry, yes.
Do you think like they value OSS information, or does they value like self-developed like own software?
In internships. Oh, sorry. So you're asking, do they care more about open source contributions or personal projects?
Yeah.
That's a good question. I don't think it really makes a difference. I think it's more about how you frame it in terms of, like, let's say you did a personal. Well, let's say you did like a project with the uni society, like the DevSoc, right? And you're like, I worked on the what's this thing called? Not angles. This thing. Let's say you worked on that. I really like this, and I used it a ton at uni. Oh, here we go. Yeah, the new timetable's out. And so maybe you worked on this and built a feature, and that feature is now used by a bunch of UNSW students. Like, that's awesome. Like, that's the kind of thing to talk about in the interviews and put on CVs and stuff. Oh yeah, sorry. There's a CV process as well. I think the CV is before the leak code, if I remember correctly. And but anything that's like I did something that either taught you something, or it helped someone else, or it had some sort of effect. And that's really what we're looking for. Is like, software is, and this is again Yuchao's point, software is useless if it doesn't have an impact on people. Maybe it has an impact on you because it teaches you how to do JavaScript or TypeScript. And as long as you can talk about that and tell a story, then, personal project, open source. Open source is really cool though, right? Like if you, I follow a lot of Rust-based tooling for TypeScript because I work in big monorepos that require like really fast tooling. And so I'm like always on the GitHub for these like Rust tools, looking at the issues and checking out stuff. And it's like, if you can, maybe not something as big as RSPack, but like if you can contribute to an open source library and that thing, like, I don't think NPM is open source, but like if you contributed to NPM, then it's like, that's huge. And anything where you can, illustrate this tale of like, here's what I've done and the impact it has had, then is, they'll sort you out. Yeah.
Thank you, sir, for answering my question. I just checked the Atlassian career website. And
Yep.
There's no open positions right now.
Yep.
So I want to ask how the recruit cycle looks like in a year.
So they start in around February, I think, and then that goes through to, and I'm not in the recruiting team, they do change these, but my understanding is it's like early year, sort of February to April, is like that's when you hand in an application, and then sort of April, through to the next few months are going through the process of like leak code, interviews, and getting to the point where you've either got the internship or you haven't, and then start the internship in November. So at the moment we're just like, we're about to get a new cohort of interns, and I think it's like basically when the interns finish is then they start getting ready for the next, they start advertising for the new ones.
So it's November, December, January.
Yeah. Yeah, 3 months, 12 weeks.
what's a typical hour
It's a full-time job. Yeah. So it's like you're coming to work basically. And I will say that like a big chunk of the internship, and I did a bunch of internships at uni. A big chunk of that is just like learning how to conduct yourself in a professional environment. Atlassian's a really good place because it is very welcoming and very forgiving. I did my first internship at a place that was maybe a little bit less forgiving to my mistakes, and I made quite a few of them. And that was fine. We ended up alright, but yeah, it's good because you get you get a lot of support in those early weeks.
when people can work remotely?
Yes. Yeah, there's certain parameters and rules around that, but yeah, Atlassian is a remote first company. I had the pleasure of working from home yesterday. Any other questions? Otherwise, we might wrap it up. I'll stick around if you guys want to talk a bit more afterwards. Cool. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me, Yu Chao, as always.
Let's give Nick another round of applause. Thank you so much for the fantastic guest lecture.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, so that's all for today.